All right. Hello and welcome. We are right at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get today's Platform Academy started. I am Sharon Barnes, your Platform Outbound Product Manager and today's host, and we have an incredible session lined up, and I can't wait for us to dive in. Now, before we get started, I have a couple quick logistics to share with you. These presentations are crafted with you in mind, and our goal is to inspire you with those fresh ideas and practical use cases that'll elevate your understanding of our platform tools. Plus, don't worry if you miss something, this session is being recorded and will be available in our community on the Platform Academy forum. So feel free to fire away with your questions during the presentation. Just remember to put them into the QA section so that our amazing panelists can address them. And we want to make sure your voices are heard. So after the event, there will be a quick survey that helps us improve our content for everyone. And of course, a quick reminder to practice Safe Harbor. We might share some exciting new features today, so let's keep everything compliant with those best practices. Now to the good stuff. I am thrilled to present our fantastic speaker, Rendir, who will take us through a journey about continuous authentication with zero trust architecture. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Rendir. Take it away.
Thanks a lot, Sharon. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. I'm Randhir, Senior Manager, Product Management in the IAM space. I'm super excited to present a continuous authentication session with you. I'm logging in from India, so 9:30 p.m. for me. But I hope I would present a great demo so that you can see the usefulness of the feature and also try to answer all the questions live. If there are any questions that we are not able to answer, I'll try to answer those in the community post. Let's start with ServiceNow Vault. So we have a product that is available on our platform for enabling the advanced security controls. It has 5 different products as part of it. So first is encryption product, which basically help you do data at rest encryption and runtime encryption. You have data privacy product that allow you to discover, classify, and anonymize sensitive and personal data that is residing on the platform. And then we have zero trust access, which I will be talking about today in deep. And then you have log export services and code signing as well. So all these products are available with ServiceNow Vault bundle, which is a premium feature, requires a separate license. Within the zero trust access, we have 3 capabilities. One, that you can create policies based on the location to allow or deny access to an instance, enforce dynamic MFA, or reduce privileges in a session. The second feature is called policy-based session access. That feature is used to dynamically adjust privileges based on various criteria, like whether the device is managed or not, or whether the user is on trusted network or not. And the third feature is continuous authentication, which is today's focus area. Using continuous authentication, you can enforce step-up authentication or re-authentication in a logged-in session before allowing access to, let's say, certain table, which contains sensitive data, privileged data, PII or PHI information. So we will just go deep into it, that what is the use cases for continuous authentication, why is it important to use continuous authentication, what use cases it serves. Yeah, over to the next slide, Sharon. So let's talk about zero trust access and what it can do for you. So as I mentioned, basically it is built on the principles of never trust, always verify. Basically, with zero trust access, you can protect your data without impacting your business operations. So if you recall, we have a product called adaptive authentication. Using adaptive authentication, you can create policies that allow or deny access to the instance. You can also enforce MFA. But what zero trust allow you to do is that you can use various criterias to do more than just allow or deny behavior. You can have granular controls to say that access is only allowed when certain conditions are met. and you can also control how much access is allowed. Continuous authentication adds another layer on top of that because we are going through a defense in depth approach. So you have some controls at the time of login. Probably you are using SSO. At SSO layer, you probably have MFA. And then once you're logged in, we are having various policies that are running in to check if the session must also is complying to all the security policies. We have ACLs in place. What continuous authentication does in addition is that, let's say there are certain tables that are containing super privileged information, and you want, or your product security team wants, that before allowing access to that sensitive table, you must have a high assurance session. So Sharon, can we move to the next slide? So basically what continuous authentication allow you to do is to define policies to require step of authentication or re-authentication to establish that high assurance session. Now, why do we want such kind of behavior, right? Can't we say that, hey, this user is already logged in and that's enough, right? But what Zero Trust says is that you should have defense in depth security approach, meaning that you must explicitly verify the identity. So there are three key principles on top of which this product has been built. So first is that even though the user is logged in and the device has a cookie to continue the session, you must still explicitly verify the identity specifically for the sensitive data use cases. Second is that the privileges must be limited. You should only provide privileges that are needed to complete a specific task or function. Just because I have logged in, it shouldn't mean that I should have access to everything. There can still be certain data or functions that requires additional authentication. So the additional authentication would give you the privileges that are needed to access those sensitive data. And third one is that it's a principle that you always assume breach, meaning if, let's say, there is a compromise at the login layer, or if, let's say, there is a stolen cookie attack, or there's a session hijacking attack, how can you still protect your sensitive data? So with keeping these three principles in mind, we are building Zero Trust products, and continuous authentication, specifically looking at never trust, always verify, although you have a logged in session, but still let's re-verify again. If I try to draw parallel, it is very similar to any financial services that you may have accessed, typically banks, right? That you can log in just with your password, but when you are actually doing a fund transfer or looking at, let's say, adding a different pay, it asks you to provide another layer of authentication. So this is the same principle we are using on the ServiceNow platform. Can you please move to next slide? Okay. Now, why do we need such approach? Now, if you look at the platform, it contains a lot of data. Some of that data is a regular business day-to-day activity data. Probably it doesn't have a very high business impact, but the platform now also contains PHI in some cases. It has PIA information for sure. In some customers' cases, we are also having finance data, right? So not all type of data requires strict security, but there is some certain categories of data where you want to ensure that, hey, I'm meeting all the compliance requirement. I'm ensuring that the right user is accessing that data for right reasons. And when they do, I'm 100% sure that it's the same user. Let's move to next slide. Now the question is that typically all the customers will have single sign-on enabled on their instance, and they are pretty much doing MFA and everything using that single sign-on solution. So why we need ServiceNow continuous authentication, right? Why can't the IDP? So the key point we have to remember is that the session risk, which is associated with a logged in session, it changes. It can change it can change during a session. So for an example, a user, when they logged in, might be connected to a Office trusted network, but after that they may have disconnected from the VPN, right? Or in some, if I take this scenario of session hijacking, in that case, if let's say there is some vulnerability in the device or other places in the network, they might steal your session cookie and then try to have a session with that. So for a session that is running in the ServiceNow instance, the SSO provider has no clue about the change. They also do not have the visibility about the transactions that you are doing, because once the session is done, Okta or Azure AD or Intra, they don't have any visibility that what data you are accessing or what is the transaction value or is it sensitive or not. So for these reasons, you need to have a solution that works directly from the platform. Having said that, we still leverage the solutions that are provided by the IDP, and we integrate well with them so that your users can use the same MFA that they had at the time of login. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is a high-level flow? Let's assume a user access a portal. It's an IT portal, does not have a sensitive information. You may not use MFA, but when the same user navigates to a table that contains sensitive data, or they try to perform a high value transaction, at that time, the continuous authentication feature will kick in and it will ask the user to re-verify the identity. And for the re-verification of identity, you have two steps. One, you can have MFA. Two, you can have a full re-authentication. And for MFA, if let's say you have logged in with ServiceNow local username and password, we will enforce the MFA provided by the platform. But if you are leveraging SSO at the time of login, we have also provided options to integrate with Okta, Azure AD, and other providers, wherein you can have MFA provided by those SSO providers. Uh, let's move to next slide. Okay, so in what are the top use cases that the continuous authentication feature is supporting? So you can create or configure policies either directly based on a table. Let's assume that you know that there is a table, it contains sensitive information, and I want to have a high assurance check before allowing access to that table. You can create policies just based on the table. In the second case, if let's say you have already identified the tables that requires protection and you have associated a data class to them, so you can also configure policy based on data class. I'll cover both of these use cases in my demo. And I will show you that what is the key difference. Next slide. Okay, so here is the end user journey would look like. Once the policies are configured, let's assume a user is logging in. When they do the initial authentication, their existing login policies will kick in. They may or may not have MFA, and then they can access pretty much everything for initial 5 minutes if they have completed MFA with local login. Now, if those after those 5 minutes are done, the high assurance session is complete. Now, if they are accessing any high privilege asset at this time, the platform will say that, hey, you need to create a high assurance session. And then for creating the high assurance session, the user will do MFA or re-authentication. Once that is done, the high assurance session will be reestablished, and then you will be able to access all the high privileged assets. So with that, I'll jump into the demo. I'll start sharing my screen. So I hope you are able to see an instance. It's an internal demo instance. This feature is available from the Yokohama release onwards. So I am on the Yokohama patch version. So first thing that I will do is I have installed all the required plugins. And after that, I have logged in as an admin, and I will elevate my role to continuous authentication admin and security admin. Once I do that, I will be able to see the new console that we have shipped as part of Zero Trust Access product. So I'll type in Zero Trust Access, and you can see that along with the existing feature that was used for dynamically setting the privileges based on policy, you also have continuous authentication. So let's move to continuous authentication, and you will see a new console. So there are some KPIs about the policies, which I will come back to later. So let's directly head into the policies. So I have one demo policy, but let's create a new one. The policy creation is very straightforward. You have to just choose whether the policy needs to be applied on a table or it must apply on a data class. When you choose a data class, let's assume in this case I am choosing PAI, it will list all the tables that are part of that data class, and the continuous authentication policy will apply to all these tables. Now, how do you actually enforce or establish high assurance session? So if let's say the user has done local login, in that case, high assurance session establishment will happen after successful platform provided MFA. If they have done SSO based login, it will be done through the IDP. Now, let's see how you configure the IDP to enable high assurance session. So this option is available with both SAML based IDP and OIDC based IDP. In this example, I'm taking OIDC. So if you go to your IDP, you will see a new tab for continuous authentication. There are two important fields in this. One is the consumer URL and another one is the script. So this URL needs to be specified at the identity provider configuration layer. This is to ensure that when we send the step-up authentication request, the IDP is sending us back the response on this URL. The second thing you have to do is that you have to choose a script. So this is, we have provided 4 or 5 example script. 2 scripts are for re-authentication, one each for SAML and OIDC, and 2 scripts are for Azure AD and Okta, wherein you can choose that script to enforce only MFA or enforce both username and password and MFA at the IDP side. Once you have configured successfully at the IDP side, you can enable this checkbox that continuous authentication is configured. Once the job is done, if let's say you have multiple IDPs in your system and you want to enable continuous authentication for all the IDPs, you have to complete this step for those individual IDPs. Now let me go back to the previous policy that I have already created. So you can see that I have a demo policy, which is saying that require high assurance session when a user is accessing PII data. Okay, so now let's see the user experience. But before that, I would also like to highlight that I have enabled this feature by enabling this property. I'll come to the rest of the properties after the end user demo. So let me log out and then try to log in with Okta, which is configured to use continuous authentication. So as you can see, I'm getting redirected to Okta. I'll complete username and password based login. Okta requires MFA, so I am completing that step as well using my biometric authenticator. Once authenticated, I am redirected back to the ServiceNow homepage. Now let me try to access that table. So you can see, because I have logged in using SSO, I do not have a high assurance session. So it is immediately asking me that, hey, this is the resource that requires additional authentication. Please authenticate yourself. Now, when I click on this authenticate link, it takes me to Okta again. And you will do the same steps. In this example, I have configured re-authentication through my script, both for Okta and Azure AD. You can also have just the MFA. So both of those scripts are available. Post authentication, the new tab automatically closes and the previous page is refreshed, and I am able to see the data that is part of this table. Now, there can also be a scenario where you don't want to get interrupted in between. So there is also another way to enable a high assurance session. So for that, you have to go to profile. In the profile, there's an option to create high assurance session. And you can see that you can have an high assurance session on demand. So this, once you have completed the high assurance session by logging in, it will be by default applicable to next 30 minutes. So in the next 30 minutes, you will not be required to authenticate again. That duration is controlled through a property that I'll quickly show. I'll elevate my role to continuous authentication admin and security admin. And I will go to zero trust access, continuous authentication in the properties tab. So you can see that you can control the high assurance session length with this. The default high assurance session for local logins can be controlled by this property. So let's assume that you have just did the MFA at the time of login and you do not immediately want the user to prompted for MFA again. For that, you can set up this property. You can also control what message is displayed to the end users, right? And then there are other properties to handle that what happens if user fails the step of authentication attempts a number of times. So after 5 times, the session would be locked out. The original session would be locked out. If the user does not, if let's say a user sees the authentication message or the high assurance session requirement message, and if they don't complete the authentication, they can still access all the data that is not protected by continuous authentication, but this data will not be visible to you. Now, in order to ensure that you are having a proper audit of such enforcement, you also have there's an audit table and we have KPIs configured on this. So if you go to number of times a policy is enforced, you can see that we tell that, okay, this was the resource, this was the authentication method, this was the IP, and this was the policy because of which uh, continuous authentication was enforced. So this basically gives you the audit. I can also show the experience when the user does a local login, but before that, let's see if we have any questions. All right, so if you do not have license for Vault, what authentication methods you do not get OTB. So all authentication methods that are available on the platforms are available by default. This step-up authentication solution that gets applied within a logged in session on demand. For this, you need Vault or Zero Trust Access license. So if you get Vault, you get Zero Trust Access. If you do not want the full Vault and just want Zero Trust Access, there is a standalone SKU available as well. What that company protected mean in different security slide. So company protected was just an example. So you can name your data class anything. So in my slide, I named it company protected. So data classification is an existing feature. You can basically have bunch of tables collected into a category, and then you can name it. So you can see there are a bunch of data class that are available in this instance: HR, PAI, payroll, sensitive, talent management. So some of the data classes are available out of the box. You can also create your own data classes based on your use case. And then once the data class is created, you can also apply continuous authentication policy. Okay, I'll move to the next question. We are configuring the ServiceNow operations workspace for multiple divisions and BU. The goal is to provide visibility to specific records submitted. I think this question probably we have to take offline. This is unrelated to this topic.
All right, so we'll come back to that one and make sure we follow up for building that.
How
And
zero trust license? So I'll share a KB with all the details. So zero trust access is a percentage based subscription. So based on how much you're spending, there is a I believe the out of the box SKU is licensed as 10% of your complete ACV, and Vault is available for 30% of your ACV. how to set up biometric authenticators with ServiceNow. So you can go to your profile, and within the profile, there's an MFA option. You can configure multiple authenticators. You can have authenticator apps, you can have biometric authenticators, you can also have hardware security keys. So this option will come into the picture if, let's say, you have logged in using local login and password. And in that case, for high assurance session, you will require biometric authentication. To answer next question, is it available as part of it? This requires a license. This is not available out of the box. Adaptive authentication is available out of the box. Next question, we are moving our instance to GCC. We do have SSO solution. For your use case, we have another feature called adaptive authentication. You can easily use that to deny access from any other country other than USA. Probably I can quickly show that as well. So this is the adaptive authentication feature. Within that, you have location filter criteria. I was actually using the same example where I have list of countries that are embargoed, and I can then create a policy to say deny the access when someone is logging in through those countries.
And just to clarify for my curiosity, is that location filtering based off of only zero trust, or can you do that with other methods of authentication?
So for using any policy with location filter criteria, you require a zero trust access license. But
Okay.
then once you have the policy, you can apply it different contexts. You can use it to allow or deny completely, or you can use it to enforce MFA, meaning you can say that if somebody is logging in outside USA, enforce MFA. You can also do the same with session access policies.
All right. And we have a follow-up question that just came in on that same topic of, so we need to list all countries to deny, or can we do it another way around and only allow from USA?
Can do both. We can do both. So you have both allow and deny behavior, whatever behavior you choose. So let's assume you choose allow policy, then the platform will only allow access if the criterias are met. So let's say you have a location filter criteria just with USA, you can set up a policy saying allow the access if the user in USA. In
And that
all other
means
scenarios, it will
all
automatically.
others are excluded. Perfect.
All right, how are data classification set up? Yeah, so as I mentioned, there are some out-of-the-box data classifications that are available, and customers can create their own data classifications as well. All right, next question, data class presentation has stable linear layout, which is inconvenient to see full data class. I'll take this feedback and share it with the PM who owns the data class. But having said that, we are also coming up with a new console in the Zurich release that is called Vault Console. In that, we are bringing all the Vault products, including uh, data privacy and continuous authentication at a single place. So using that, you will be able to have a single view to discover the sensitive data and then protect the sensitive data through either encryption or zero trust access. So just wait for that feature. It's coming live in Zurich release. If a user uses VPN, with this defeat the country embargo option. So if the VPN does not share the X forwarded for header, in that case, the platform will not have any visibility of the real IP address. And in that case, yes, they can bypass the policy because the platform will get an IP address that is associated with the VPN IP. And from there, we will be able to just know the VPN location. All right, can we add IP address restriction platform access limit to users? Yes, we can. Using the post authentication policies, you can configure policies based on role and network. You can see my example. In this one, I am allowing access to admins only if they are on trusted network. So you can do that using the post authentication context policy.
That is excellent. I know of several government contracts I worked at prior to becoming a ServiceNow employee where something like that would have been a perfect fit for a solution.
I'll take next question. The location refers to the user location. No, this location is derived dynamically. We are talking about the geolocation. So for that, we look at the incoming IP address. We have an integration with a third-party vendor called MaxMind. And using the MaxMind's IP to location database, we determine the location and then we apply the policy. All right. Do we have any questions? I think we are done with all the questions, right, Sharon?
I believe that was all of them.
All right.
Thank
So
you so much.
let's go back to the slide. How is adaptive different than IP whitelisting? Yeah, I think we have one more question. So let me share my screen again. So adaptive authentication and IP address control, they similar, they solve the similar use cases, but adaptive authentication is more granular and provides more options. So one example is that there are some customers who want to have IP restrictions for all incoming traffic, barring the mobile app. So if they want to have users accessing the instance from mobile app using their personal devices without having VPN, but for rest of the traffic, they want to have full IP restrictions. So those kind of use cases cannot be solved with IP address access control because it's just an allow or deny behavior. With adaptive authentication, you get the flexibility to also add more things like location. You can also add trusted mobile app. So basically, this is a policy framework with better options like location and trusted device. Yeah, to answer your question, this is the main difference. Otherwise, they apply to all the traffic, whether it's logged in session or whether it's non-logged in, whether it's API or non-API, it applies to all the traffic. Um, do we have any questions in the chat? No, I think we are not. All right, so Sharon probably can start sharing the screen again and we can cover the final slides. Sharon, are you able to switch?
Thank you. Here we go. And I do hope you will all join us in the future for our upcoming academies. I do want to give a big thank you to Randir for the excellent session, and we will be having the video added to the Platform Academy playlist in about a week, which you can find here at this link or QR code. And for those who are curious what's coming next, we have an amazing session coming up on July 1st about how to make notifications subscribable with John Lind. Other than that, thank you again, Randir. Have a beautiful day. And for all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining. We hope you have an amazing weekend. We will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.